I'm curious as to, you're one of a kind, Justin. I mean, you're known as the greatest fighting game player in American history. Your name is the biggest fighting game player name in American history. And I just want to know, what separated you from everyone else? I wrote
Hmm.
here that there were many killers at the time. You became the prodigy. You became the greatest fighting game player in American history. How does this happen? And what did your training look like from the beginning till about now? Obviously, now you have your family and you're more on the content side, but I would still be willing to bet any amount of money that if you actually played Street Fighter 6 or any game, you would destroy 99.999% of the people that touch this game. So, but I just want to know at that time period, like what made you the prodigy? Like, how did the game click in your head better than everybody else? And there were many killers at the time. So I'm very interested in hearing your perspective of it because you're essentially the Tom Brady of fighting games in America.
I think it's also it's also based off like the person that like before I was Justin Wong, there was Eddie Lee, and I want to say it was because of him because he was the definition, and nobody really has footage or like kind of like knows who he is, right? Like but he was
Yeah, I've
like
heard his name. He's like a
yeah,
phantom,
he's like the East
legend.
Coast legend, and he was the original lane player, like super defensive player, like literally like if Alex Valle was like the sword, he was the shield, right? That was kind of like the
Okay.
rivalry before I came on the scene, and I would play him in like every game, and he would smoke me in every game. Like literally, like he just had the better fundamentals. He was the epitome of like this is what fundamentals looks like and carries over to every game. So I like kind of like made my gameplay off of him. And the one thing that stood out when I finally got better than him and able to kind of like lame him out was that I just had better offense plus reactions than his defensive style. So
Um,
that really helped me kind of like it really helped, it really shaped my gameplay. And so I just took that and played all these other fighting games with kind of the same mentality of like carrying fundamentals over and over.
mhm.
And defense, man, defense is the key of the game to actually understand like people's habits, players' habits, understanding like matchups, when you could steal, when you could take back your turn and everything like that. Like offense, I know like now, or even like from the last few years, it's like so good and people get mauled and everything like that. But ultimately, in the end, at the highest level of the gameplay will slow down eventually, right? The gameplay
Of
will slow
course.
down, and people are going to have to kind of play neutral fundamentals, footsies, and everything. So I really use what I learned fighting against Eddie Lee from like the late '90s, early 2000s, and him just busting my ass all the way till now. Like I think that really helped a lot. And literally like there's times where like there's so many different tournaments, different games I never played before. But I'm like, okay, well, who's the Shoto of the game, right? Who's the one that has who's the fundamentally sound character? And I could pick up that character and beat people who has played this game for like maybe like months, weeks, or or whoever writes the wiki or whatever, because it's like if you don't
Yeah.
have basic fundamentals, then it's like like you could be better than me at the game, like knowledge wise, and I'll tell people like that. Yeah, he's better than me in the game. He just doesn't have better fundamentals than me, and that's probably the reason why he lost. Because
Right.
there's lots of like tournaments that they have a lot of side tournaments, right? Like even now, right, the random side tournaments and everything. So it was like the same
Yeah.
thing back in the day, and now I'm at the point where I can travel and win the major tournaments like Dirt Strike, CVS2, Marvel 2, and so forth. But the prize pool is like $300, $400 for first place. It's very low, right?
Right. Right.
So I would have to learn all these different games that are coming up as like side tournaments, not like the major stuff, to try to get a profit. Like, cause
Oh,
yeah, I was
yes,
super
yes.
broke. I was super broke, man. So me, and there was no sponsors. So flying to like, let's say I went to final round, right? Final round going from New York, like $300 ticket, and then we'll split a hotel room of like 8 people in a room and stuff, right? So we're and then pay.
What year was this, by the way?
This was like during the whole 2000s.
Wow. So the final round even existed back then.
Yeah, yeah. Final round and Tech Showdown are like kind
Wow.
of like the oldest tournaments, the longest like tournaments that ever like existed.
That are still alive right now.
Except for I don't think Final Round anymore, but Tech Showdown is
Oh yeah.
now the longest fighting game tournament series of all time, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
I would have to learn all these different games, like all these SNK games, like like random fighting games that I didn't even have in my arcade. I would have to learn them to like kind of gain a profit, right? And that's kind of
That's
like, yeah,
crazy.
that's kind of what gave me the name of like, oh yeah, he just plays whatever he wants and is just good at it. That's like kind of where that came from.
That's
Um,
where the prodigy came from.
yeah, like
Mm.
because that's how I would make my money, able to just like survive and not let my grandma have to worry to like her try to like work really hard and everything. Was me trying to win all these random ass tournaments like at the major tournaments in order for me to gain a profit, right? So now
Yeah.
me winning like 10 tournaments in one final tournament, I would make maybe like around like close to $2,000, right? Compared to like if I just won Marvel 2 and Third Strike,
Right.
that's only like $600. Um
Yeah.
so yeah, I increased that by playing all these tournaments and becoming like a multi fighting game player and everything like that. And pretty
Mm.
much that really helped me understand how to like play fighting games in a faster pace or learn how to play fighting games in a faster pace because of my experience of just kind of hustling these like these side tournaments at tournaments.
And that in itself is what spreads your name around
It
the
does, yeah.
country even faster because you're tapping into every scene and all these scenes are now talking about you. That's crazy, man. Like I didn't even like you're literally playing games that aren't even in your arcade just so you can make a little bit of profit. Like, man, people don't know that. Like being broke pushes people
Oh,
to
100%.
to you know to do the extremes, and that's just amazing to hear that like you helped your family from that and you recognized your skill level was better than these people in terms of the fundamentals. I mean, but like what do you think separated you though from everybody else at that time? Like there was Ricky who was a killer. There's all these players that are killers, but like how what made you so dominant in an era where like YouTube didn't exist, and you didn't really know if somebody came out with some crazy unblockable tech or something like that. Like, how do you manage to stay so consistent from the late '90s to the 2000s, leading up to Street Fighter 4?
It would have to just be just playing as lame as possible. I play off the clock. I don't play off of like the player,
Oh yeah,
right?
yeah. No, that's
Right,
that's facts.
right.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah,
all
yeah.
about the timeouts and everything, and literally all my games. Like even if I don't like know how to play the game, my theory is like if I don't know how to play this game or don't know the matchup, I'm going to block and let you have your turns, let you have your offense until I see kind of like your habits of like what you like to go for, and then from
Okay.
there, that's when I counter, right? So let's say, for example, if you're playing Street Fighter 4 and then you're playing Ken, and then you're like, okay, I like to do crouch medium kick fireball into FADC into crouch short stand jab, and then carrot throw, right? And then you
Right.
keep doing that like 3 times in a row. Then I will realize, oh, okay, this is what you like to do after this. So maybe I can just do like a interrupted, I could interrupt with a reversal during that string after the FADC. So I'll look for little
Mm-hmm.
gaps and little like sequences like that because eventually most people that play fighting games, they always have a habit. It's always they always have a habit and always have like these specific flowcharts of like offensive strings that they like to do, right? And it's really hard to find those like typical like typical strings in defense. Like if you're a defensive player and you have like this little knack to like, let's say shimmy, right? The easiest thing is like, yeah, you fall for shimmies all the time. But if he doesn't
Okay.
fall for shimmy or mixes it up, it's kind of harder to find like his flowchart defense. But in terms of flowchart
Yes.
offense, it's way easier to spot out. So that's what I would just block for like 30 seconds. Like, yeah, do your offense, and then eventually I'll see the gap, I'll see your flowchart string, and then I'll counter that. And then from there, once you take that away, their whole game plan falls apart, because then they realize, oh, I have to rely on my neutral, my fundamentals, and whiff punishes, and that's my
Hmm.
territory.
Hmm.
That's where I want to be. Um,
Yeah.
so that's the one thing that I do pretty well, I think, compared to like other players who were like the master of their crafts, right? From
Yeah.
back in the day.
Okay, so I'm actually curious. That I wanted to go into the next topic, but I'm curious about something that you just mentioned,
Yeah.
and I feel like it would help me out a lot, and it would help out a lot of players as well. You said that you would see a sequence, for example, in Street Fighter 4, such as low forward, fireball, FADC, crouch short, stand jab, counter throw, right?
Yeah.
And then you said maybe they do it like 2 to 3 times, and then you pick that up, and then maybe the fourth time you respond with something.
Yep.
Now, in a 2 out of 3, you don't have much time to be able to pick up the patterns that they're doing. See, one of the issues that I have as a player, Justin, is I'm really good in longer sets,
Hmm.
like first to fives, first to tens. I feel more comfortable. Even in a first to three, I feel a little bit more comfortable. But in this 2 out of 3, and obviously in a first to three as well, I feel like my play style is catered more towards a first to five or a first to 10. And I'm not sure how I can do a better job of picking up people's patterns. Because let's say, for example, in Street Fighter 6 terms, yeah?
Yeah.
Let's say I'm Ken and I'm going up against Luke.
Okay.
Okay. Luke does crouching medium kick into drive rush, crouching jab into throw.
Yep.
Okay. And that's a true block string, the crouching medium kick, drive rush
Yep.
into
Crouch
crouching
jab.
jab. The next part is the 50-50. It's either he's going to go for a throw, or either he's going to go for like a slightly delayed button or a shimmy.
Hmm.
Let's just keep it for simplicity's sake. Let's say he either presses a throw or goes for the shimmy after the crouching jab. Okay. That is a true 50-50 right there.
It is.
Either he's going to throw me or he's going to shimmy me.
Yep.
Now, in my head, let's say it's early in the round, okay? Like round one fight, it just started. He starts off the round with walk up, crouching medium kick, DRC, crouch jab. In my head, I'm like, okay, I should probably eat the throw here because I have a lot of life. He just wasted 3 bars. I should probably eat the throw here. Okay, great. I eat the throw, but now I'm faced with the next 50-50. If he decides to drive rush, meaty, or drive rush throw. Now, in my head, I'm like, man, should I have ate the throw right there? Like, okay, what about next time? If he does this again, I should probably tech. And then I try to tech, and then I get shimmied for 1 billion damage. And it's like, I'm trying to, for example, I see his option A, right? He went for the throw.
Yep.
And then I respond with my option A to counter his option A, right? I'm like, okay, well, I have to tech the throw here in order for me to counter it. Now, obviously, there's a backdash as well, but I'm just keeping it for simplicity's sake. My pattern recognition, I feel like, is not being done fast enough, or somehow it's wrong, because I'm guessing wrong quite often. And I'm not sure how to strengthen that aspect of my gameplay,
All
man.
right.
Like, this is a legitimate question.
So
It's a
so
2 out of 3. It's Street Fighter 6. I'm dying.
I get it, right? I know where you're coming from. So now, before we get into that Street Fighter 6 thing, right? It's obviously easier from back in the day because there were more defensive options, right? Street Fighter 4 had the crouch tech. So because of that, it's like you're not going to eat a bajillion damage in Street Fighter 4 because of defensive options in that nature, and they pretty much took that out from Street Fighter 5 to Street Fighter 6. Now, for Street Fighter 6, for pattern recognition, what I would like to do, and actually, this is actually the perfect point to bring up. Obviously for your Street Fighter League NA win, when I watched it, and you remember that if you watched I don't know if you rewatched the video, but you lived the moment. You remember that time when it was like, you were fighting Punk, and
Yes.
literally Zhao Hai was trying his best to talk English to you, and it was really hard to understand. I actually understood everything he said because I would have gave you the
Hmm.
same strategy. Like
Okay.
literally, he was like, "Yeah, all you have to do is just against that situation. All you have to do is just walk forward against Punk and just crouch block low." And literally, he's going to do crouch medium kick drive rush. It wastes his drive
Yeah.
gauge, and you make Cammy you force her to use her drive gauge, and from there she just doesn't have a game plan. Because even if you take the throw from there, she spends 3 bars, and now you have to do that one more time, and then she's possibly burned out in that situation. right? So
Yeah.
that's what he meant, and a lot of people didn't understand that, but I understood what he meant because I'm like, yeah, that's definitely what you should do against players that like to do like button in the drive rush cancel. So now
Yeah.
for Luke, for example, with like crouch me and
Or
punch,
Ken
yeah,
too.
or
Ken
whatever,
too.
Ken,
Yeah.
yeah, any
Yeah.
character with a great crouch button into drive rush into 50-50 grab or whatever.
Yes.
So now,
Yes.
what I would do, like the response is like you need to train to drive reversal, the button to drive rush. I think that's the one
Mm.
thing that people don't do enough because when you think about risk and reward, okay, you did button drive rush, you spend 3 bars to drive rush that. I drive reversal at that time, right? It spends 2 bars. Can you counter the drive reversal? It's a hard read because the player has to do super, right? Something with like an invincibility that beats the drive reversal cancel. Um,
Right.
so, but the thing is, if you think about that, it actually puts you full screen away after hitting that drive reversal, especially if you spend 2 bars versus your 3 bars. Obviously, that's not going to work every single time because based off like drive gauge management. But if that was round one fight, then your first initial response, instead of taking the grab or seeing that the 50-50 is happening, because obviously offense is so strong in that position, is using your defensive option of drive reversal dare, because then that gives you information of like, oh, he's not even confirming it. Right, he's just actually
Mm.
just doing button into doing it, right, to put himself in the offense to get the party started. So what happens
Yeah.
if you don't let him have the party started? He's down 3 gauges. What's it? Is he going to do it again? You're walking forward, so you're going to get back your drive gauge faster than he is, the one that used to spend
Ooh.
two
Yeah.
bars worth, right? So
Yes. Yes.
is he going to
Yes.
just do it again and put himself in a burnout situation? Because even if he does it again, right, that's when like he has to make a decision, right? So you can actually do drive reversal again, or actually just do like you block the crouch jab and then do a like OD reversal, and from there he's
Hmm.
burnt out. He's closer to the corner, because from there you can make a more offensive decision with your defensive while you're in defense because he's using the second 3 meters for the drive rush cancel. So that's how I would look at it, as like kind of use that drive gauge management into your favor with the defensive terms to force him
Yeah.
to play a more slower pace game, because from there then he'll play your game because he's like, well, I need to wait for my drive gauge to come back, so
Yeah.
I have to play this neutral. And
And you're walking forward as well to
exactly,
create a neutral pressure against your opponent. So
yeah,
now you're forcing him to try to press a button, and if he whiffs something, you can whiff punish if your fundamentals are stronger.
yeah.
So that's actually really really good advice. And I never really use drive reversal because it's so shitty in Street Fighter Six.
It's not
Like
the best,
it doesn't
but
feel so good.
yeah. But for when it comes to people that
The
like to spam
DRCs.
DRCs, it's so good against DRCs.
Okay, that is well noted, and I'm definitely going to start practicing
Yeah.
that.